are listening to MINDSHOCK True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. And today we are tackling the very recent case of John Paul Miller and MICA Miller. There's a lot of hoopla surrounding this case. The South Carolina pastor, his behavior, which some people find strange, the circumstances of MICA's death, which some people also find strange. Now, I don't usually cover cases that are breaking news. However, this one has been requested and it's all over the media, so we can take a look at it in typical MINDSHOCK fashion with logic and reason at the forefront. If you want to help support the podcast, help keep up awareness in true crime cases, unsolved cases, missing persons cases, wrongful convictions, and more, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. Or if you are listening live, leave them in the live channel. Try to get to all of them. And of course, you could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. So yeah, this case has been all over the news. I will just read a couple articles here, and then we'll get into some videos. My NBC 15, death of pastor's wife shakes community, reported cause of death makes it tougher. A community in South Carolina is mourning the death of a 30-year-old pastor's wife, apparently from suicide. MICA Miller died last weekend at Lumber River State Park near Myrtle Beach. MICA was energetic, affirming, adventurous, faithful, loving, giving, forgiving, talented, joyous, creative, assertive, bold, determined, authoritative, passionate, hardworking, a risk taker, and so much more. Her obituary said. She was probably the greatest wife anyone can ask for. Her husband, Pastor John Paul Miller, said she was incredibly affirming. We spent every night together for hours just talking and talking and talking. He added MICA had some mental health struggles and had been getting help. Each time we would help her through it and take her to the doctor, and we got her through it, and everything was fine, her husband said. She even gave a few testimonies here at church that we have on video. She battled suicide, but God took care of her and got her through it. MICA's friends mentioned her leading the women's ministry and worship team at church, and they can't believe she's gone. She had a heart for missions. When she went to Africa this time, she just fell in love. That was her heart. She would do anything for anybody, said Trisha Ross, a friend of MICA's, as she fought back tears. Her husband said MICA had dreamed of opening a school in Africa and was always giving to others. Now her husband has a message for families dealing with mental health issues. If you see any type of sign, get them to a doctor. I mean, the second you see it, don't wait. The Daily Beast has a write-up here, obviously a kind of a dubious source, but family wants deeper probe into the suicide, in quotation, of South Carolina preacher's wife. Loved ones of a pastor's wife who was found dead in a North Carolina state park with a bullet wound to her head are not convinced she died by suicide, as her husband claims. Instead, they're pressing authorities to probe MICA Miller's death as something potentially more sinister, especially after her husband's announcement of her death a day after her body was found did little to quell rumors about the tragedy. This has to be looked into deeply, Ken Young, MICA Miller's friend, told WPDE. There's gotta be some accountability here because, yeah, a tragic life was lost, and it's not just as simple as mental health issues. Miller's body was found Saturday in Lumber River State Park, about 70 miles north of the Solid Rock Church at Market Common in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where an obituary said she was a worship leader, graphic designer, youth leader, woman's ministry leader, and an assistant to her husband, John Paul Miller. On Sunday, the pastor delivered an entire sermon as usual before revealing the shock news of his wife's passing. He told his congregation Sunday that her death was self-induced and that she wasn't well mentally. and was in need of medicine that was hard to get to her. That's an interesting phrase. He never mentioned MICA Miller by name. I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away, he said. It was self-induced and it was up in North Carolina. The pastor asked his congregation not to talk about his wife's death inside the church, adding that he was just kind of going on adrenaline. That's a little weird. She had struggled with suicide before, John Paul Miller said. Each time we would help her through it and take her to the doctor, and we got her through it, and everything was fine. She even gave a few testimonies here at church that we have on video. She battled suicide, but God took care of her and got her through it. Court filings showed that MICA Miller had filed for divorce from her husband just weeks before her death. Still, a glowing obituary from Miller described a loving relationship between the two, writing that the Kansas native was a great stepmother to 5 children and an amazing wife. So, stepmother, and also filed for divorce recently. Well, I can see why people would have questions. Again, this is MINDSHOCK, where I do not claim anything is true or untrue. The motto here, of course, is the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. MICA was energetic, affirming, adventurous, faithful, loving, giving, forgiving, talented, joyous, creative, assertive, bold, determined, authoritative, passionate, hard worker, risk taker, so much more. The obituary said she and JP have been friends since 2009, married in 2017, and spent almost every single day and night together. The Robeson County Sheriff's Office announced Thursday it was opening a probe into Miller's death, with Major Damian McLean telling WPDE its officers were still in the process of gathering info from people in South and North Carolina as part of their investigation into how Miller died. Miller posted a final photo to her public Facebook profile on April 9th, a selfie with the eerie caption, "When terrible, terrible, terrible things happen to you, y'all know what I'm talking about. RPF resting peace face." She had posted photos of herself being baptized in the ocean a little over a week earlier, tagging a South Carolina church that was not the one where her husband preached. And on March 22nd, posted a video in which she discussed leaving a dangerous situation. McLean told WPDE there is no indication the public is in danger. A GoFundMe for MICA Miller had raised approximately $4,000 by Friday morning. The Facebook page Voices in the Wilderness, said to be run by Miller's mother, has posted frequently since her death. Her mom noted that a no-contact order and a divorce was filed just days before this tragedy, adding that we are devastated. Miller's sister, Sierra Francis, urged people in a Facebook post not to listen to false stories being shared about her sibling, adding that she had suffered from abuse. MICA was a God-fearing, joyful, loving woman who did not deserve the abuse she endured, Francis wrote. If you hear anything about this from anyone other than her family, please question it. Reach out to siblings or parents. And again, not to downplay that in any way, however, obviously siblings and parents don't always know the truth about certain situations their kids are in, because their kids don't tell them, obviously, especially, depending on what that situation is. So to remain objective, logical, and neutral, you really can't take anybody's word on blind faith alone. Not that they're trying to deceive, but they may be mistaken or not know, or in certain cases they might be trying to deceive. So again, any logical, objective, neutral individual will not put blind faith in any human's words, regardless of which side that human is on. So let's look at a video making the rounds here. This has been chimed in on by a number of creators. So let's see what they say about it.
At the end of service and after giving his sermon, this pastor makes a bizarre announcement.
We're not going to do an altar call today. Instead, I'm going to have you stand up and I'm going to make an announcement. And after the announcement, I'm going to ask that you leave church quietly and don't talk about the announcement. I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. And yeah, it was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina.
This is Pastor John Paul Miller of Solid Rock at the Market Common Church in South Carolina. As you heard, the pastor said that his wife, MICA Miller, did this herself. But there are a few things that the pastor failed to mention, like this. According to reports, the pastor was served with divorce papers just 48 hours before. And take a look at this. Weeks prior to her death, MICA uploaded a series of videos suggesting there was abuse.
I've had a lot of women that have reached out to me about situations of abuse. And I just want to tell you what a lot of people have told me. Male or female, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what gender you are. Abuse is abuse. And you are the bride of Christ. And my Bible says that he took all the abuse you could think of for you so that you didn't have to live that life of slavery and bondage and pain.
The pastor says MICA struggled with mental health for years. But friends of MICA says there's something more going on.
This has to be at least looked into deeply. There's got to be some accountability here because, it's a tragic life was lost.
Though the pastor has announced the cause of death, investigators have not.
When your world is shook up, you need to take a pause. And I can only pray that more people will take a pause and I'm trying to get my priorities straight right now. And that's making sure that my heart doesn't have any unforgiveness, bitterness, resentment, just forgiveness and hope for the future.
Yeah, the people in the chat saying that he was so quick to announce the cause of death. Yeah, normally it's whether it's suicide or not, like a lot of times grieving family, they just say the person is passed and they ask for, either privacy or whatnot, time to grieve. They don't just go around and out, especially when it's self-inflicted. I mean, that's usually not broadcast immediately to everybody. I mean, that was kind of weird.
And peace. Because you can't put a price on peace.
Yeah, that's pretty weird. Fundy Snark Uncensored. Subreddit. Had an interesting thread on this case. Starry Night 94 posted, South Carolina pastor John Paul Miller is suspected of murdering his estranged wife only 24 hours after he was served with divorce papers. So there's I mean, it's been reported anywhere between a week and then there's a no contact order. So anywhere between a week and here they're saying 24 hours. I don't know. MICA left her husband, then posted videos online suggesting he was abusive towards her. She then filed for divorce against him. After service one morning, this pastor announced to his congregation that his wife died by suicide the night before in North Carolina. And apparently he still chose to go preach the next morning. The police have not yet released her cause of death. But based on her posts and the suspicions of her family, they're asking the police to dig deeper into the investigation because it may be very possible that this pastor actually murdered his wife for leaving him and exposing his abuse. So some discussion here. Supposedly he's 44, she was 30. They got married in 27 when she was 23 and he was 38. The obituary says they became friends in 2009, which would make her approximately 15. Another poster said there are photos on Facebook circulating of him on a date with another woman just days after her death. Definite red flags for sure. Other posters say that apparently it was an open secret that he had been dating this other woman for quite some time. The other woman had been married to a man who died in unusual circumstances in 2021. Well, that's a little bit of a coinkydink, isn't it? Wait, two people are now seeing each other whose spouses died under mysterious or possibly mysterious circumstances. Lord Zed in the chat says, I've had friends who died from suicides and drug overdoses. When it came up in convo that they died, I also leave out what happened. Hurts too much to say, but this guy was chomping at the bit to say she killed herself. Yeah, it was definitely weird. I mean, just for privacy matters. I mean, that's just something that's not really, it's not really said. Especially not immediately after. So if this is true, that he's seeing this other woman whose husband died under unusual circumstances in 2021, two people seeing each other whose spouses have now died under possibly suspicious circumstances. Huh. Apparently, this other woman claims... Okay, this is kind of weird. So, Little Bitty Gecko is saying this. She met her now deceased husband while he was in rehab for an accident that left him paralyzed. He drowned 3 years ago in another supposed accident where he was alone in a pool area and fell over the edge in his chair, she claims. This happened at the time that the rumors first started of her and JP dating. Interesting. That's interesting. A lot of people are saying they're getting Daybell vibes here. Just a series of strange deaths. Apparently, JP owned the church. So this guy was her youth pastor in the church group. Someone else said that the picture of him and this other woman were in the Facebook group Are We Dating the Same Guy in the South Carolina, Charleston, Myrtle Beach area. Huh. Interesting. So he has 5 kids? So she became a stepmother of 5 children at 23 years old. So, and his second wife. So there's apparently an inside source here. I work in the funeral industry here locally, and there are some things going on behind the scenes that is not my place to talk about. But the ball is rolling, thankfully. No cremation would take place until the medical examiner signs off on the cremation permit. Suicides or suspected are automatically sent to the medical examiners for a second evaluation, and nothing will happen before the investigation is over. He can hold a celebration of life all he wants, doesn't mean that urn isn't empty up on the pulpit. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because in other cases, how quick they are to cremate, especially when the police are involved in some kind of corruption or conspiracy. They want to cremate as soon as possible. So apparently there was also a Google review on the church page a month prior, pointing out Mika Miller's Facebook videos accusing him of abuse. They also mentioned money from the church going towards drugs. I wonder how he felt about that. So that was a month ago. So that was before her death. Huh. Another poster revealed this. Her sister's Facebook posts in February and May say Mika didn't have access to her own phone, email, or Facebook, and heavily implies it's being controlled by her husband. Yeah, this is pretty tough. I mean, obviously it's very early in an investigation. So plenty of red flags. Plenty of red flags. Yeah, I'm not finding too much information on his first wife. But again, the new girlfriend's husband died by drowning, allegedly while alone, and he was paralyzed. So, on Well-Trained Mind forums, Don M. posted that John Paul Miller had 3 women in his wife. His ex-wife, who has filed a no-contact order and several domestic violence charges against him, so apparently she's still alive. And Mika, who was married to someone else before JP. And the new girlfriend whose husband died by drowning in a pool, allegedly. Huh. That's interesting. So all of these individuals have had at least one former spouse. Very curious. Very curious. So let's look a little bit more. Let's look a little bit more here on the new girlfriend's ex-husband. And let's see what this looks like. This is getting really, really complicated now because all of them have had at least one former spouse. Can't find too much info on MICA's former husband either.
There's an interesting development in the Pastor John Paul Miller case and the death of his wife. Remember, the pastor is the one who oddly announced at the end of a church service how his wife died.
I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. And yeah, it was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina.
Now, Pastor John Paul and his wife MICA had been separated for some time, long enough for Pastor John Paul Miller to have a girlfriend. And this girlfriend has an interesting past. Her name is Susie Skinner, and according to multiple sources, Susie and Pastor John Paul have been dating for quite a while. And that's interesting because the pastor and MICA Miller were not legally divorced. And as you can tell in this picture with Susie, the pastor still has his wedding ring on. But there's something disturbing that the pastor and Susie Skinner have in common.
We're learning more about the man who died after being found unresponsive in an Horry County pool. The victim was 40-year-old Christopher Skinner, a paraplegic and a motivational speaker.
Susie Skinner's former husband, Chris Skinner, died from a drowning accident. Chris Skinner had a tragic accident some 20 years.
So again, supposedly from the rumors, John Paul started seeing this new woman right around the time of the husband's death. Again, no idea if that's true or not. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. I do not claim anybody is innocent or guilty.
Years ago that left him bound to a wheelchair, but he adapted and lived a beautiful life. And according to Susie, he enjoyed going to their community pool often by himself. And on Labor Day 2021, Chris did just that.
Well, also, Lord Zed in the chat, why would you say, how can you even know for certain that it was self-induced? Because if she's found, he got a call that she was found somewhere in the woods or wherever with a gunshot wound to the head. So how does he know somebody didn't kill her and make it look like suicide? Like, there's not even any time for an investigation. So how could he even know? And I wonder what the police officer or whoever called him, if they corroborated what they said to him. Did they say maybe, it looks like possible? Maybe they asked. I mean, they don't just call somebody and be like, oh yeah, your wife died of suicide. We just found your wife, she died of suicide. Like, there's no time to even do an investigation. I mean, you gotta get stuff to the lab. I mean, you gotta just to double check. I mean, was a gun found with her? You got to double check the ballistics, fingerprints, DNA deposits on the body. That's not going to come back from the lab in an hour flat, especially not in some of the, in most of these areas, unless maybe the FBI or the CIA are involved. You're not going to get that kind of lab result immediately. So how could they have told him that it was definitely suicide? Huh. They might have definitely asked him questions. Was she struggling mentally? It's just to kind of help with the investigation. But how could they have told him definitively and completed the investigation in mere hours? That really doesn't make any sense. There needs to be an interview with the officer, or at least some kind of statement from whoever called him. Or possibly even a recording. I mean, all the police calls should be on a recorded line. So if they ever release the phone call of that, unless he's making up that there even was a phone call, but I don't think he'd be that dumb, right? I mean, he can't be that dumb, can he? Yeah, so he probably did get some kind of phone call, and without hearing the call of whoever gave him that information, it's really impossible to to figure out what he extrapolated from that and why he phrased it this way.
But apparently something went terribly wrong. According to reports, Chris got too close to the pool with his wheelchair and fell in, with nobody around to save him.
Does this story add up? So unless that guy committed suicide, why would he be rolling his wheelchair right around the pool? I mean, he's not planning on going swimming. So either it's, I mean, how could it be an accidental death? This would either be suicide or somebody pushed him.
And as I said, Chris had been in his wheelchair for almost 20 years. And according to Susie, every day during the summer since 2013, they would go to this pool. So he was familiar with the area. But somehow, on Labor Day 2021, Chris misjudged how close he was to the pool and fell in.
Wait, he's not at a party with his wife on Labor Day? He's hanging out by himself? By a pool on Labor Day? Does this story make sense to anybody? He's hanging out but by himself on Labor Day? That's kind of a weird story.
And guess who conducted his funeral?
It's very, very exciting. I was Chris's pastor to preach a funeral in which I don't have to lie. It's probably my first funeral where I get to say all the truthful stuff. And that's because we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Chris was a child of God, is a child of God, faithful husband, wonderful father.
Well, that's a really weird thing to say. How many funerals had he done at this point where he's saying this is the first one, he doesn't have to lie? How would that make all of the, I don't know how many previous funerals he's done here. I mean, a dozen? I mean, I don't know, he's not that old, but on the other hand, if he owns his own church, I mean, you would think there'd be at least a couple, possibly dozens. And so he's admitting that he lied about all the previous people and all the previous ones? This is really weird. I mean, this is really weird. I mean, even if he's innocent of everything, I mean, this guy must be dumb. I mean, who would say that to their entire congregation? That he lied about all the previous people on all the previous. This doesn't make any sense. Does anybody else think this is extremely weird to just openly admit and basically with glee to gleefully admit that this is the first time you're not lying while conducting a funeral? Does anybody else find this weird? I mean, that's just a weird thing to say. I mean, that's just weird.
Great friend, brother.
And if you want to read more about the life of...
Also, most pastors, do they just have one hand in their pocket nonchalantly like that? That just looks like a sloppy pastor, one way or another. Unless that's his tell, have any of the other... Whenever he gets on stage, does he never have his hand in his pocket except for that funeral and when announcing his ex-wife's death? Huh. Yeah, Jess Palmer, that's a good question. What are the others people think that has had him do their funeral? Yeah. Well, also, have any of the other funerals... if this guy's a serial killer, I mean, is this his MO? He kills people, and then he gets to conduct the funeral? Is that his MO? That'd be dark. That would be one dark secret. That would be so dark if that's how he just does business. I mean, I'm sure people are now investigating all these other funerals and whether he had any connection to them, because this is already two now where he has a direct connection with people that have died.
Chris and Susie Skinner and how she's adapted to this tragic accident, you don't have to go very far.
And again, I do wonder if he always has his hand in his pocket whenever he's doing funerals or sermons or whatever.
You just have to go to the pastor's own church website. The entire story is there. I want to be very clear. This is all just circumstantial evidence. As of now, there's nothing connecting the two deaths. But I do believe this is a very important part to a story that's becoming very complicated. A story that, according to friends and family of MICA Miller, that's very dark. Darker than what the good pastor wants you to know.
God hates divorce, but why? According to everybody I've asked and the scriptures that I've found, it's because it hurts people. But does abuse hurt people? How do you think God feels about that?
If you haven't checked out The Annihilation of Michael Knowles by Pearl Davis, I did a multi-hour logical analysis on their so-called debate, where Pearl just completely obliterated the goof. I don't think he'll ever come back from that humiliation. But I actually went over in the Bible a number of passages that explicitly allows divorce, again, in cases of abuse. So, again, this kind of hard-line hallucination that it's not allowed in the Bible, there's quite a few passages that explicitly not just allow, but encourage it. I don't know, you guys want me to go over them again? I mean, I guess it would be kind of pertinent to this case and important for, I'm not a Christian, but I know there's a lot of Christians out there, and some of them maybe are staying in marriages they shouldn't be staying in under the impression that the Bible forbids it when it actually says the opposite. I mean, maybe we should go over that. I don't know, in the chat, you want me to go over that real quick? Lord Zed is down to go over it. Jess and Ricky are down. Okay, yeah, let's go over it just because I know there's a lot of devout Christians who have the wrong idea about it. They think it's a hard line. There's quite a few. Ephesians 5:33. However, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. So again, any of these violations would invalidate the union. I'm trying to find the one passage that I think best encompasses all of this. Because most of it is just, the standard stuff where the union is sacred, but that's all under normal conditions. All of these verses are if there is no abuse. Like Matthew 19:8-9, Jesus replied, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard, but it is not this way from the beginning. I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another woman commits adultery. So basically, if you do it just for kicks, that would not be good. Which is actually, a lot of people do get divorced, just because they feel like it. So Let me find the exact passage. So, Exodus 21:10, if her master marries another wife, he may not reduce her food, her clothing, or her privilege as a wife. If he does not do these three things for her, then she shall leave free without payment of money. So again, that's a free pass for her to leave because of neglect. There's one very specific passage that talks about what each human is endowed by God to live a fulfilling and happy life. And that is kind of the ultimate. So when that's being violated, the lesser rules do not apply. I totally forgot what passage that was. I went over it in the Michael Knowles versus Pearl Davis logical analysis, where Knowles, the false teacher, the charlatan doing the devil's work, was completely exposed by Pearl in that debate. I mean, that was, I think, an 11-hour analysis somewhere around there. Actually, it might have been longer. It might have been like a 12-hour analysis. I mean, there was a lot of obliteration in that one. So, okay, here's another one which is kind of pertinent here. 1 Corinthians 7:10-15. So this deals with a believer versus a non-believer. Now, this pastor, obviously, if he's abusing his wife, he is a non-believer because he's violating a lot of the Bible. He's a charlatan. So this would invalidate the union as well. So here's the passage, 1 Corinthians 7:10-15. To the married I give this command, not I but the Lord, a wife is not to leave her husband, but if she does leave, she must remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband, and a husband is not to divorce his wife. But I, not the Lord, say to the rest, if any brother has an unbelieving wife and she is willing to live with him, he must not divorce her. Also, if any woman has an unbelieving husband and he is willing to live with her, she must not divorce her husband. For the unbelieving husband is made holy by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy by the husband. Otherwise, your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. But if the unbeliever leaves, let him leave. A brother or sister is not bound in such cases. God has called you to live in peace. Let me repeat that part again. If the unbeliever leaves, let him leave. A brother or sister is not bound in such cases. Not bound. God has called you to live in peace. So by leave, they've basically left the union if they're violating it. So God's command and call to live in peace would supersede just suffering the abuse from a spouse just cause. Also in Ephesians 5:22 to 31, explicitly stated here, husbands are to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hates his own flesh, but provides and cares for it, just as Christ does for the church, since we are members of his body. So again, if there isn't that providing and caring, then that would invalidate everything here. So this kind of immorality or abandonment, again, would be explicitly permitted in the Bible and Christianity. So that's pretty much all I'm going to go over there regarding the Bible. For the people that think that divorce is not allowed for any reason, they've clearly not read the Bible very carefully, or God's call to live in peace. Now, again, obviously, this doesn't include, non-physical, just arguments or people not getting along, irreconcilable differences or whatever is usually cited. If there's no actual abuse and it's just people not getting along who are bored of each other, obviously that is not grounds for divorce biblically. So, in this narcissistic generation, all of that gets mixed up, obviously, but it's actually kind of sad because I don't think that's gone over in churches. So she might have suffered here unjustly, thinking that she had some kind of a duty greater than she did. Again, God has called each and every one to live in peace. Peace. Not any kind of abuse. So what does everybody think? There have been protesters at his church. Apparently he lost a lot of congregation members. No surprise there. I mean, it's just weird. Yeah, we really need information. We really need information from whoever called him, whatever officer called him. And again, I don't know if they even released any details of if he has an exact alibi either. Wow, this is weird. There are more details here. Also from Robbie Harvey, the clips that I played on TikTok. He posted on Twitter, there's new information here. October 2023, MICA filed for divorce. The case was dismissed February 2024. In February 2024, Pastor John Paul filed for support and maintenance. The request was dismissed. April 16th, 2024, MICA filed for support and maintenance. A hearing notice was sent out April 23rd with a court date set in June, and she died a few days later. So interesting. Huh. Quite a strange series of events. All coincidental or not? So there's also a timeline here going back a little further. February 4th, Pastor John Paul preaches a sermon on Korah and Moses and how it's wrong to rise against religious leaders. February 23rd, he files for spousal support. February 25th, in another sermon to his congregation, Pastor John Paul says a mentally ill person doesn't know they're sick. You have to trust people around you. The thing that's sick is your mind, and your mind is what you need to realize that you're sick. Now, is this projection, or is this him setting up a narrative here? Because his church is taking a hit to the pocketbook regarding her insinuations of the abuse. Denise in the chat asks, I wonder what happened to his first wife, the mother of his 5 kids. Supposedly she filed for a no contact order, and there were several claims of, several reports of domestic violence. Now, I don't know if anybody's verified that. That's what has been stated. March 10th, Pastor John Paul preaches a sermon and he reveals he went through 2 years of messages on his wife's phone. He found that 18 people reached out to her saying, if you ever want to talk about your husband, you can talk to me and I'll keep it confidential. Visibly upset, the pastor followed up with, that's a demon talking. Wow, so he's publicly airing his dirty laundry in these sermons publicly. This was March 10th. Okay, hold on a second. So this guy's saying, this guy conducts funerals where he says it's the first one that he doesn't have to lie. I mean, that's kind of crazy. I mean, even if he's only done like a couple other ones, how are those people and their family, how are those people's families supposed to feel about that? Wow, Jess Palmer says, he talks negatively about his now deceased wife on a regular basis during multiple sermons just 4 hours ago. Wow. This guy's weird. I mean, even if he's innocent, this guy's weird. March 10th, Pastor John Paul says to his congregation, one thing I'm going to preach about is getting rich, strong, healthy, and finding a hot wife that loves Jesus while wearing his wedding ring. I actually think that might be slightly innocuous, just if he's trying to appeal to the younger guys in the church. I mean, that's not weird. I don't think that's that weird. Again, especially if he's got a dwindling congregation, that might get some of the younger guys in the door. Getting rich, strong, and healthy. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's not that strange to me. March 10th, Pastor John Paul tells his congregation that his wife was in the hospital, and as soon as she got out, she left him. She gets out and she just leaves, just completely leaves me. Leaves everything, drains the bank account, and just goes, guess what? While you're talking bad about me out there, I'm building a school in Africa for over 100 kids to be able to be fed. This is weird. He's publicly airing all his dirty laundry here. It's so weird. This is so weird. Like, why is he even talking about this? Man. I mean, and why would anybody want to even trust a pastor who can't deal with any kind of issues with his wife? He has to publicly air their dirty laundry. Like, who wants a pastor like that? I mean, that's weird. That is so weird. Boggin in the chat says he had her whacked. Yes, if he does, well, not yes. I don't claim anything is true and true. If he has an airtight alibi, that obviously doesn't mean that he didn't have her killed. That obviously that needs to be kept in mind. March 17th, Pastor John Paul tells a story of a pastor whose wife left him for a member of his staff. The pastor had to hire a third-party company to find her. Once he found her, divorce papers were drawn up. When the time came to sign the papers, the pastor couldn't do it because Bible says divorce is wrong. And if she wanted out, she would have to leave him. Well, again, the Bible does not say that. This guy's a pastor, and he doesn't even know what the Bible says about divorce. Again, we just went over that, especially in the case of adultery. That is clearly grounds for divorce, or any kind of abuse, obviously. March 12th, Pastor John Paul's request for spousal support was dismissed. There's no explanation as to why. March 17th, in a Facebook post made by MICA's sister, Sierra Francis, says she keeps an eye on her phone for fear of my sister's safety due to others' behaviors towards her. She goes on to mention the sermon from March 17th and calls out the congregation of Solid Rock Church. So this is March 17th, not that long before. March 18th, MICA posts a video encouraging others. She says, I'm just making sure my heart doesn't have any unforgiveness, bitterness, resentment, just forgiveness and hope for the future and peace. March 22nd, another video suggesting she was being abused physically and mentally. She also says God hates divorce, but how does God feel about abuse? She also suggests her husband forced her to take illegal drugs. Well, again, there is a call for peace from God that supersedes being any kind of abuse in a marriage, which is also invalidated if the husband or wife, well, specifically the husband, does not care for the wife as he does his own flesh. Invalidates it right there, according to the Bible, explicitly. We just went over all of this. So it's kind of sad how it seems like she went through all this undue stress and turmoil because none of these pastors actually go over this stuff and God's call to peace. April 16th, she files for spousal support. April 23rd, hearing notice sent out for her request. A court date for June 5th was set. So this is the 23rd, and the 27th, she's found dead. The 28th, Pastor John Paul announces to his congregation at the end of the service that his wife was dead and it was self-induced. He also reminds the congregation of her mental illness. April 28th, her sister, Sierra Francis, posts on Facebook saying, "Don't listen to the false stories being told about her." Yeah, this is really weird. I mean, I can't believe he talks this much trash regularly in his sermons and he has a congregation. So, Robbie Harvey also reported that Cody Alcorn, journalist at 11 Alive in Atlanta, that MICA Miller made a 911 call and the conversation indicated she was alone. Well, that's kind of weird. I'll put up the tweet here from the journalist. Now, again, that doesn't mean she was really alone. That could mean that she thought she was alone even if she wasn't, but that's interesting. I wonder what that means. Other speculation is that she was forced to make the call by someone holding her at gunpoint and to highly suggest she was alone. So what does everybody think? This is weird. This is weird. The timeline of events and the court filings are definitely very strange. And this information from this journalist that the conversation indicated she was alone. Huh. Yeah, Jess Palmer, we went over Susie Skinner and the strange circumstances of her husband's death. Yes, highly, highly strange case here. Apparently, there was a funeral that JP did for MICA today. Huh. Interesting. I got one more clip I want to go over here. I mean, he says a lot of strange things. He says so many strange things in all his sermon. I mean, people are just starting to go through all of them. There's so many to go through. Yeah, here's one more. Let's see what everybody thinks about this one. Wow, that's really bad quality. That's terrible quality, but we're mostly going to just listen to what he says. Okay, so that's not working, so let me get a different version of this. Yeah, this is pretty crazy what he's going to say here, so just give me a second, I'll get it on the screen. Okay, this should work here.
When
Okay, that's way better quality.
Abigail went to Nabal, he was in the house holding a banquet. Then in the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him all the things, and his heart failed, and he became like a stone. 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. David didn't have to do anything. God took care of it. And David got something in return. Watch this. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Praise the Lord." That's exactly what I would say if I found out that some people in my life were dead.
Wow. Wow. I mean, this is crazy. This guy with one hand in his pocket, just blatantly, I mean, the things he says in his, I still can't get over the fact that he said that in that one funeral, that was the first time he didn't have to lie about the person's funeral. I mean, this guy is weird. Let's listen to that again.
Say if I found something in return. Watch this. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Praise the Lord." That's exactly what I would say if I found out that some people in my life were dead. As long as they went to heaven, I want them to get saved first. He has kept me from doing this wrong and has brought Nabal's wrongdoing down on his own head. Then David sent word to Abigail, asking her to become his wife. He did not waste any time at all.
So this is March 17th. So this is just a month before, approximately a month before. This is all leading up to this timeline.
Now, and just so you know, ladies, if you want a good man, this is what you have to do right here. Ready? She bowed down with her face to the ground and said, "I am your servant. I am ready to serve you." I'm just saying. You want a good man, you better memorize that scripture right there. That's the scripture you need to memorize.
That's a weird, I mean, he's saying that kind of like a joke that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Kind of weird. Welcome, Wendy Howard. How does he have a congregation is my question. How does he, I mean, especially when he's talking about all these other funerals, apparently he was lying about the people and then he bragged about it? I mean, and just his sloppy appearance. He's on the stage with a hand in his pocket. That's just weird. Does anybody else, like, everything about this guy is weird. It's just weird. I mean, I don't know. Like, no, I've seen plenty of other pastors who are, at least they look semi-normal and semi-professional, and they don't say anything like this on stage.
Abigail quickly got a donkey and went with David's messengers and became his wife. Okay, today in part 10, for your notes, I want to talk to you about this. Let go of the past. Let go of the past. Whether it happened last year, last month, or yesterday, whoever hurt you, whatever they said about you, whoever walked away, let it go. The reason that the windshield of your car is so large and the rearview mirror is so small is because
that's kind of cringe. Okay. Bringing in windshield analogies? Wow. Wow. Yeah, this guy is weird. I don't really understand how this guy even has a congregation. I really don't. I just don't. Other people are digging into his finances and found that there's quite a few property transactions in the months leading up to this. He sold his house to his church. So this is some kind of asset redistribution. Very weird. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the investigation is going to have a field day with all this stuff. I mean, it is highly suspicious, if nothing else. If nothing else. And the stuff this guy openly says, openly airing his dirty laundry, just, I mean, the things he says are just absolutely insane. I mean, how would any even semi-professional pastor say this? Jess Palmer says, hate to say it, but some people are just not all the nicest, are not all there, nicest way I can say it. Yeah, it's just weird how he has a congregation at all. Like, Susan Marie says, did he become a pastor online? Well, let's say he did. Like, why would anybody go there to listen to him talk about he's going to praise the Lord if certain people in his life are dead? I mean, it's just weird. It's just weird. Who wants to go to a church where the pastor's just hanging out with his hand in his pocket sloppily and airing his dirty laundry about his wife? Like, if this guy can't even live, in a godly way, I mean, it's just weird. It's just weird. Boggin says, who even listens to a moron like this? That's an interesting way to put it. I mean, wow. So I'm sure there'll be plenty more developments coming up in the coming days and weeks. So anything else comes up, I'll do a follow-up episode. But that's it for now. I just wanted to touch upon this because it is very, very strange. And the circumstances here are definitely strange. The timeline is strange. And if this is true that there was a phone call, like how many bases did he cover? Did he really hire somebody to kill her and have them hold her at gunpoint and force her to make a call that she's saying she was alone? Or was that call made prior to something happening? But again, without that being released, without the audio being released of whoever informed JP of her passing and exactly what they said, we're not really going to know. But yeah, very, very weird nonetheless. Hope everybody found another edition of MINDSHOCK True Crime interesting and informative. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.